Did the ancient Romans really swipe their butt with a shared sponge? Probably not. This tool is called a Xylospongium, or sponge on a stick. It is widely believed that it was used like modern-day toilet paper in ancient Rome, but shared among everybody in the latrina, the toilet. Many artworks, YouTube videos and documentaries use this attention-grabbing and astonishing fact. Even well-known scholars were once convinced of this at some point. One recent example are Lindsay and Patricia Watson, who have described the Xylospongium as an instrument to quote, wipe oneself after defecation, end quote. Ancient historians, they are a peculiar lot. Some of them devote entire articles to the use of ass-wiping sponges on a stick, as Gilbert Wiplinger did. But he is not alone by far. There is a whole scholarly debate about whether ancient Romans were washers or wipers, that is, whether they used water and their hands, or some sort of cleaning tool to clean their backside. It was Wiplinger who brought forward a different interpretation of the Xylospongium. He suggested it might have been used like a modern-day toilet brush to clean the latrina, the toilet, rather than the users themselves. Wiplinger initially got suspicious of the Xylospongium as an ancient form of toilet paper, because sharing a butt sponge basically would have meant to quickly spread diseases. His reading of the ancient sources furthered his doubts. The most extensive ancient source on the topic, Seneca the Younger, a famous Roman statesman and philosopher, describes how a Germanic gladiator, who ought to fight against wild animals in the arena, committed suicide on the toilet, the only place an unfree gladiator would ever be alone. Here is what Seneca said, quote, there he pushed a stick to which a sponge was attached in order to clean what is hidden down his throat and thus cut off the breath's way, end quote. The phrasing, clean what is hidden, is in fact very ambiguous, given that the Latin word obscena could refer to both a person's private parts and any dirty thing or place in general. To translate Seneca's phrase simply as clean one's backside is thus clearly a questionable interpretation. There are only 4 other sources, all of them used in a rather humorous context. One of them is Claudius Terentianus, an Egyptian who served in the Roman navy. He asked an acquaintance for help in a letter, but this person didn't care about his plea. Claudius then simply concluded, quote, he did not care for me more than for a Xylospongium, end quote. More delightful, but not less ambiguous, is the Roman poet Martial, who uses the toilet sponge as a metaphor to illustrate the ephemerality of luxury. He states that even the finest meal of today will be, quote, a matter for a luckless sponge on a doomed mopstick tomorrow, end quote. The comic playwright Aristophanes, who wrote in the 4th century BC, only mentions the sponge, but not exactly in the context of a toilet. And lastly, an inscription was found in Ostia. It reminds the visitor, quote, utaris Xylospongio, end quote, make use of the Xylospongium. This, however, seems to support Wiplinger's thesis that the Xylospongium was used as a toilet brush, because it does not make much sense to remind people to wash their backsides, but reminding them to clean the toilet seems much more likely. So, overall, the sources agree that the Xylospongium is an item used in the latrinae. However, none of them give us a hint to its exact function. It might have been used to clean one's back, or it might have been used like a modern-day toilet brush to get rid of unwanted traces. Scholars now think this second option most likely, because the shared use of a sponge would quickly spread diseases, and there would always be the risk to injure oneself with a wooden stick. Additionally, archaeologists have found evidence, such as pieces of cloth, stones and even garlic, which they think were used to wipe one's butt. In conclusion, if you want to swipe your butt the Roman way, you should try garlic. We especially recommend the peel.